Serious, what's an uneasy gut feeling about someone that turned out to be spot on? My cousin Ariel, 8F, and I, 10F, were on a road trip with our grandpa. We stopped along the way to pick up our oldest cousin, 13F, Brittany. We barely knew her. When we got to Brittany's house, she took us to her room while she packed. I remember feeling off, weird energy. She took forever packing, so Ariel and I went to the garage where our grandpa and Brittany's stepdad were. We said hi to them and immediately I felt my skin crawl. I didn't know why, but I knew I needed to get Ariel out of there. I told my grandpa we were going to play Game Boy in the car and told Ariel not to go back inside. We stayed in the car until Brittany was ready to leave. 10 or so years later, Brittany's stepdad was arrested for salva minor. He was abusing her for her entire life. Her mom knew and was jealous of their relationship. He was sentenced to life without parole. It's heartbreaking she went through that. When I heard he was arrested, I immediately remembered this day and every detail. My instincts knew he was a predator. Frick him and frick the mom. I hope your oldest cousin is surrounded by family who protects her and loves her now. New people moved into the house across the road from us. Nice enough, friendly and approachable. But after about 6 months I said to my husband he's mixed up in some dodgy crap. My husband was all nah, they are great, not a chance. Don't worry about it. About a year after that, someone attempted to shoot him in his driveway. When I was 17-19, I worked at this neighborhood pizza shop. There was this tall, skinny guy with braids that was always coming in really late at night, even if he didn't end up buying anything. That by itself was weird, but it was his vibes more than anything. The way he'd either stand outside or come inside and sit down, then just watch me the whole time. Nothing ever really happened outside of that until one night when I ended up in the shop all by myself because the other workers had either skipped out on their shifts early, were out on a delivery, or had stepped out the back for a smoke. All of a sudden, he was just there at the door, smirking at me like he had me where he wanted me. He threw open the door, stalked up to the counter, leaned so far over it that his face was in mine, and then said, "I'm going to frick you." When I backed up in shock, he continued, saying how he'd been watching me and that I could stop pretending not to be into him because he knew I was just waiting for him to come for me. Come on girl, I know you're a freak. He was genuinely surprised and upset when I told him to get out or I'd call the cops. He basically said I better watch my back. I had to stop walking to and from work because of this guy. It was only a 15-minute walk, but with far too little lighting, far too many potential spots to get snatched or hurt. Men who think like that are the scariest because they've convinced themselves that basic politeness is asking for it. First time flatting, was 21, and we had a good mixture of girls and guys. One guy gave off some intense vibes. He was always incredibly energetic, chatty, fidgety and never seemed to sleep. Only good thing was that he kept the flat clean. Turns out he was a rimhead and robbed us after living there for 3 months. Literally, scouting out the place, getting to know our schedules and what stuff we had so he could rob us blind. Scumbag. Fidgeting, not sleeping, random cleaning. Hutil lima me head. A guy would always walk around near my bus stop never really doing anything nor going anywhere. Looks like a normal guy but could never shake the feeling that something was off about him. And then last week actually the guy attempted to rob my butt. Pretty crap job at it though. Man asked if I had any money on me and what phone I had. I tell him cuz honestly my phone is kinda crap and who carries any good amount of money to the bus. He then proceeds to flash his gun and say, "If you was lying I would have had to hurt you." Then he walked off. Haven't seen him since. What peed me off more was that my bus late by an hour. My sister's ex-boyfriend. He seemed nice, but I guess deep down I knew something was wrong. I had started having nightmares that he was abusing her. I would wake up and think thank God it was just a bad dream. He would never hurt her. Then one day she finally told us that he had been abusing her for years. Thankfully she's not with him anymore and he's in prison now. The subconscious is really good at picking up on subtle things our active brain is too busy to miss. We really should be told to pay more attention to what our dreams try to tell us sometimes. My parents' friend was a handyman and did a lot of work on my house. He gave me the creeps and I could never put my finger on why. He was over one day working and I didn't know, so I was in my yard tanning in a bathing suit. I came in and he had been watching me and tried to grab me and kiss me. I was 15. One time when I was about 14, my nan and I were walking her dog in an empty park. It was November and 9 p.m. so it was dark. This random man started walking close and instantly I felt uneasy and knew something wasn't right. He started circling us. Anyway, long story short, once I'm back in the car and my nan is at the back of the car. We thought he'd gone but he hadn't and had come sprinting back and viciously attacked her right in front of me. If you have a bad feeling, listen to it and get out of there. Don't spend the extra time putting your dog in the back, just bring it to the front of the car with you. It could save your life. Wows. This exact situation happened last year at my neighborhood park. Elderly lady walking her dog and a man on drugs started beating her and her small dog. Another man at the park saw what was happening and had no choice but to pick up a big rock near him and proceeded to beat the crap out of the druggie, saving the lady and her dog. A friend once invited one of his co-workers to one of our meetups. We just wanted to play magic and chill together. I had a really hard gut drop when he arrived and couldn't quite put my finger on why. He proceeded to get absolutely wasted, tried to establish himself as the most badass in the room. His girlfriend who he brought along turned out to be 14 while he was in his mid-20s. He tried to force himself on my sister and started to completely escalate when he was stopped by my friends. They had to force him out and pin him down while I called the police. He proceeded to punch an officer during his arrest and we later had to appear in court to give our statements. At the court date, he had a new girl with him who also looked way too young. Best thing is, my idiot friend invited him again. You guys can figure why we aren't close anymore. One of my friends would always do weird stuff to people's drinks as a joke, like put pepper in someone's Coke at a restaurant when they got up to go to the bathroom, or even spit in someone's water at bonfire. Stuff like that. And I always thought it was super weird, his fixation on messing with people's drinks. He had done crap like this since he was 7 when we met. Everyone knew not to leave your drink unattended around him cause he would frick with it. Long story short, it turns out one of our buddies caught him trying to put something in a girl's drink and he got the crap beat out of him. Super weird. We literally would joke as kids that he was going to be the creepy guy at the bar putting roofies in people's beer. The guys is a straight piece of crap. Stealing someone's food is one thing but fricking with it is another. Never frick with someone's food. Had a new guy start working at our job and he was very charming, personable, friendly. Me and another coworker were the only people who didn't get a good vibe from him. Everyone else thought he was great. We come from toxic abusive childhoods and pick up a lot of cues. Things he said, overly friendly, etc. He had everyone feeling bad for him cause he wasn't able to see his daughter. Bad mouthing his BM. He stopped coming into work. Turns out he got arrested for breaking a restraining order that he got for physically abusing his BM. He was almost textbook narcissistic and manipulative abuser. Charmed everyone and everyone was shocked when they heard the truth. Me and my other co-worker knew our wariness was right. I worked at an elementary school for a while with a seemingly really nice principal. He was really great with the kids and the whole staff loved him. I got called in for a meeting about one of my students on day and for some reason got super uncomfortable being in an enclosed room alone with him, which had never happened up until that point. I couldn't put my finger on it, so I blamed it on my past trauma and got through the meeting. A couple months later, he got fired and arrested for jerking off to young women in semi-public. Thankfully no kiddie stuff was involved and, to my knowledge, he never hurt any children. Teacher in high school. Had a feeling he was trying to or maybe even actively sleeping with students. He was nice. Math teacher. The kind that a bunch of people hung out in his classroom during lunch. Had posters on the walls of Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy. I never had his class, I just would joke to my friends about, that guy's a predator. Tasteless, I know. A couple years after high school it came out on the news. Ended up hearing from 3 girls I knew some related stories. I guess he would either invite students over or hit them up after graduation to hang out, etc. Crazy stuff. I believe everything was more of a grooming, weird manipulation of young students and not like assaults. A couple months ago I met this guy and we got to chatting. Right around the same time we met I started having the weirdest changes. For some reason I lost my appetite completely, lost interest in a lot of my normal hobbies, and just felt generally restless. I had literally no idea what was causing it since everything in my life, work, family, personal was going great, but again it started at the same exact time I started talking to this guy. He really seemed like a good, genuine guy and I liked him a lot. A couple weeks later, I realized he wasn't really who I thought he was and things ended as quickly as they started. After we went our separate ways, everything went back to normal and I could eat and I felt normal again. I've never had anything like that happen before. So strange, but it was like my body knew something was off before I did. When I was in grade 9 I sat beside this one kid in French class. I was quiet, awkward and liked to be noticed as little as possible. This kid was brash, loud, easily agitated, always in trouble, was popular but also always gave me weird and off vibes. He was the type of kid that you looked in the eye and could just tell there was something off with him. I vividly remember him always barging into class late, loudly singing children's songs and nursery rhymes while striding to the back, before the teacher either threw him out or waited for him to settle down. Everyone always laughed and thought he was a jokester. I nervously tried to have him notice me as little as possible, while also trying to stay on his good side in case he ever snapped and did something. Fast forward 10 years and this guy's made national news for allegedly strangling his girlfriend's 9-month-old child to death. He's actually still on trial, claiming that he didn't do anything and he found the child unresponsive. There's a mountain of evidence against him. There's absolutely no way I believe him. No. Had a kid who came into the pool hall once or twice with friends. His friends were upbeat and standard arcade kids, loud and annoying. He was quiet and skittish, liked his friend, but he had a weird vibe. He ended up killing his mom with a bat. Lifer. I was working at a summer camp. During staff week I was part of the group setting up the Catholic church there and I met the priest. Never liked him. He tried to convert me and I liked him even less. Turns out he is a pedophile. I needed a reasonably priced, specific location apartment in a large city within 3 weeks. I met 2 guys who shared a place, looking for a third roommate. It seemed okay. The one guy chain smoked, but the thing that set me off is his kind, quiet, Japanese girlfriend who was studying abroad in our country. She was living with the guy in his bedroom, which was a huge living area. He kept talking about how everything was better in Japan when he went there and how the women were so much better. They were polar opposites. He insisted I pay rent in cash, never transfer, which was a red flag, but I needed the place. I had to hop on with him on his electric scooter, yeah, I know, while he blasted music from it and picked up a carton of smokes while I grabbed the cash for first month rent. Anyway, as predicted, the guy was a horrible roommate and drank constantly. He would pressure his girlfriend, after she would cook some amazing Japanese meal, to come get wasted with him. Although she never drank, he would come in weekdays at 2 AM and eat her leftovers and our lunches, throwing food and containers everywhere after. Every night, she would clean the kitchen spotless. I found out why he only wanted rent in cash. I found a notice from another province for child support and he was claiming the entire apartment as his he was paying for. He was a deadbeat dad, and he would blast Metallica on these huge speakers all hours of the night. When I asked him to keep it down as I had work the next day, he screamed, "The rules are there are no rules. The sooner you get that the better it will be for you." So I gave my notice. The other roommate was a chill, nice dude as was that girlfriend, and the day before I left I asked her why she was with him. She said, "When I first came here, I lived in a house with 12 other Japanese students. There were cockroaches everywhere, in my bed and clothes. I met him and it's better situation. I am also sick of him. I go back to Japan. That is it." He then gave her a ring at Christmas with the tiniest microscopic diamond I've ever seen. It was sad. One night I was closing at work, alone, and this guy just gave me chills. Odd behavior, lingering, and wouldn't leave me alone. He finally left, and I asked my dad to come over and wait in the parking lot until I came out just to be safe. My next shift, his mugshot was posted in our break room. Multiple instances of arrests all taking place in our shopping center. Dude was not right. Turns out he was even banned from the place and had multiple restraining orders against him. Always trust your gut, folks. I attended a church in a southern state many years ago. I was as involved as I could be with the congregation. I was not from the area, so the church family became my family. A man started becoming involved with the church. He said all the right things and did all the things you'd expect of someone genuinely interested in making himself a better person. But something just felt off. But I was the only one that felt that way. He was a con man. After a few months of ingratiating himself with the pastor congregation, he promptly targeted the elderly with his business ideas. Sort of the driveway resurfacing scams you see. Thankfully it didn't last long, and he very suddenly disappeared off the face of the earth. The damage was minimal, but I felt vindicated a bit. My parents had a similar experience from the church they went to. Most of my relatives loved the guy. Dude conned thousands from my aunt and uncle and grandparents then split. To this day my mom says she's grateful she and dad went with their gut. My ex, who is referred to as he who shall not be named. He was spoiling me with attention and flowers and it made me uneasy. I didn't listen to my gut because the gals at work were telling me how lucky I was to be spoiled. We moved in together. He isolated me from everyone, and then proceeded to start beating the seep out of me. Tried killing me multiple times. Leaving wasn't an option, so I learned to deal with it. I had the life-saving opportunity fall into my lap that allowed me to kick him out, get the landlord to rewrite the lease with just my name, and the job that landed in my lap allowed me to have my kids there when they were out of school. I never applied for that job and they had no idea how they got my contact info. They saved my life. Literally. I'm always creeped out by people who act overly friendly when I first meet them. They always turn out to be buttholes. My best friendships tend to be slow burns. Sat next to a guy at my high school graduation who I'd never seen before. Gave me the absolute creeps. Must have gone the alternative school route. Made up credits to walk with the class or some such. But he was very leery with our classmates. Inappropriate jokes. Laughing at weird times. Dude was awkward as heck on top of being very unnerving to be around. He was in the news at the end of the summer that year. Turns out he'd gotten a girlfriend pregnant, had a daughter, got a trailer and a job as you do in rural America. One day, because she wouldn't stop crying, he beat his infant daughter to death. I believe he got 30 years in prison or thereabouts. I don't know why, but I really don't like that guy. So I fricked that girl and everyone knew it sick Ned was at a party. But I can't believe someone told her boyfriend. People have no respect. Yep. A guy in high school just gave me the frick that guy for no reason in particular feeling. A couple of years later I had graduated and he was a senior. I saw him on the news being arrested on charges related to child pornography. Ooh boy, here we go. Had a teacher in high school that just pinged me as something very wrong but not enough for me to say something. Always asked around about him but no one had a bad thing to say about him. Turns out he was sleeping with a student the entire time she was in high school. They came clean about it once she graduated, was 18 and pregnant. He was 35. They got married and had 3 kids before he got caught sleeping with a 15-year-old and got arrested. Like I said, something about him just didn't sit right. I knew something was wrong but couldn't quite put my finger on it. Had a social studies teacher in 8th grade literally named Mr. Wank. He seemed to have girls come up to his desk more often than not, and stood eerily close when advising them or grading their papers. He was a heavy-set guy, so it could have been my imagination or just his weight, but I swear he'd breathe heavier near them. Always was way nicer to the girls, too. A while back I heard he got in some hot water regarding personal boundaries with a couple female students, but I can't tell if it's just a rumor or not. I wouldn't doubt it, given how he acted and how crap that school was. If anyone from Pennsylvania went to PV, let me know if I'm remembering right. My TV and video teacher is named Mr. Cummings, so I hope he's not bad. I was walking home in London one night as a result of a transport strike that caught me out. Buses were off, and I only had a tenner to last me for the week, so I couldn't get a taxi back. Not sure of the way, I walked into a dead end near the River Thames and had to double back. A guy in a tracksuit walking along the Thames path clocked this, realized I was lost, and started following me. I'll be clear on this, I have little problem with people being behind me in a city. Some people are just walking the same way you are. I've never been mugged. I'm a big guy and you'd be doing well to take me on. but something about the situation made me realize that he wasn't just behind me and heading in the same direction, but that he was following me and sizing me up. I felt instinctive alarm. I'm not very streetwise, but even I detected danger straight away. I saw an office or bank building with an illuminated foyer and stood in the doorway checking my phone, in full sight of the security guard inside. The guy in the tracksuit strolled past me and turned left up a side street a little way along. People who have experienced a moment like that will know what happens next. After a few minutes I resumed my journey, walked past that side street, and continued along the road. After 100 yards or so, still spooked, I looked behind me to see if anyone was around, and he was back again. The turn up the side street had been a ruse. He'd just turned in there, stopped, waited for me to walk past, and then started following me again. I sped up. He sped up too. I sped up more. So did he. Big guy or not, I was full on scared by this point. So at a turn in the road, briefly out of his sight, I full on started sprinting away until I reached a crossroads. Mercifully, a taxi was going by just at that moment and I jumped in, telling the driver the area I wanted to be dropped off in. I didn't have enough for the whole fare in the end, and had to be dropped off early so that I could have a tiny amount of cash to live on. The taxi had to double back briefly to get on a road it needed to be on. I lowered myself in my seat just as the track-suited guy reached the crossroads and stopped, looking around with a where did he go expression on his face. Terrifying tracksuit London guy, let's not meet. This isn't about a specific person, but in college I was on my way to some random party with my girlfriends and I had the worst feeling. I felt sick to stomach, like we should not go to this party for some reason. I stayed quiet for as long as I could, but I kept seeing weird signs along the way there. I even saw a billboard that said something like it's never too late to turn around. I told my friends about my feeling and said, look, we can go. We're almost here, but I have the worst feeling about this party and I don't know why. I really feel like we should turn around and just go home. My friends actually listened to me and we went home. Later that night we found out that someone brought a gun to the party and was threatening to shoot people. He had an altercation with someone trying to kick him out and he shot 2 people because of it. Needless to say, my friends were very glad but also freaked out by my gut feeling, lol. My dad built a new toy box for my daughter. It was so cute. We figured she would probably want to climb inside it, so we used a wide drill bit to make a few holes for air. A few nights later, on my way to bed, I was struck with a horrible feeling. I went to check on her and she wasn't in her bed. I went into the closet where the toy box was and she was inside, covered in sweat and the whole toy box had condensation on it. I quickly scooped her up and threw her in a lukewarm bath and made her drink some cold water. She was fine and went back to bed, but not before I scooted that heavy toy box to the living room, where it stayed for about another year until she was older and could be trusted with basic rules. We also added quite a few more air holes, just in case. Some serious parents' intuition. Met a new kid at school in 8th grade. He was friendly enough for a while, but something in the way he talked seemed off from the beginning. Yeah, turns out he was a massive control freak and, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm pretty sure, an actual sociopath. He lied constantly, about both himself and others, harassed people when they wouldn't give him attention. He had this weird fixation of being the leader of our group of friends and seemed to want people to obey him. Kissed one of my friends without her consent and threatened to kill himself when things didn't go his way. He seemed like the archetype of the young to be criminal, even down to the weird drawings. He would constantly draw monsters or distorted faces representing the people in our class, always in a position of worship to him. In 2018, when I hadn't talked to him for over a year, I found out he had been expelled from our school. He apparently had a fight with a girl and decided to draw himself shooting her and leave it on her desk. That kid was a walking ball of issues. No idea where he is now. I hope he got the help he needed. I hired a guy once for an entry-level position at a manufacturing facility that I ran. He seemed like a good candidate, interviewed well and had all the right answers. I offered him position and he accepted. I sent his paperwork down to human resources and for some reason or another they never did a background check. Fast forward a week or so later, I happened to bump into him in the warehouse and I wanted to check on him and see how his training was going. He was very nonchalant and didn't have a lot to say. Next day I see him in the warehouse again and I ask him what he's doing. He's trying to find something for a customer that was there to pick up, and I was amazed at how much he had learned in only 3 days. He was trying to find a needle in a haystack and yet he was right there getting the item. The average new hire would have taken months to learn our system and understand how to read the location, find the location and read the tags to understand that they have the right product. I was amazed at how quickly he had caught on and definitely identified him as somebody that could fill a much needed position in our facility. I started thinking about it later in the day and for some reason I went online and googled his name. Needless to say, my gut feeling was right. There was something not right about him. He had recently been arrested as part of the sophisticated ring of thieves who had stolen tens of thousands of dollars of merchandise from several Home Depots and Walmarts in our area. He was out on bail and the investigation led them to a house that he was living in that had 6 figures and stolen high-end items within 25 miles from our location. Needless to say, I let him go that day. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.